and wept over images from Dallas of a popular young president cut down by a sniper. It's been a quarter of a century since that awful event, and yet its influence is still felt here to this day. All this week, Channel 4 reporters Bud Gillette and Steve Stoller look at that fateful time, how Dallas looks at it now, and how the world now looks at Dallas.
The Dallas stop wasn't supposed to end this way, with a blood-splattered Jacqueline Kennedy absently looking on as Lyndon Johnson became president. Instead, the swing through Texas was designed to shore up flagging political support for John Kennedy's 1964 re-election effort. Kennedy was invited here by the Dallas Citizens Council, headed then by Eric Johnson.
The security was as complete as we knew how to make it.
Eric Johnson had an inordinate concern about security. You see, he was born on the very day that President William McKinley was assassinated in Buffalo, New York. And intuitively, he understood just how people tend to remember such tragedies.
But the warm Texas sun and even warmer crowds seemed custom-made for an event of historic significance. Sadly, it was.
The president involved. I do not know the seriousness of it.
Then I whirled around and fell on the ground, and I told my friend, I said, Jimmy, those are shots. They're shooting.
There was a period of 4 days, beginning with the assassination, when Dallas wasn't Dallas at all.
It didn't seem to matter that a lone gunman, a political radical like Lee Harvey Oswald, was apparently responsible for Kennedy's death, and it didn't seem to matter that Oswald had also killed a Dallas policeman who tried to apprehend him. All that seemed to matter was that history had come to Dallas, an unwanted history that threatened to blemish this city's name forever.
When John F. Kennedy was shot here on that sunny day in 1963, he was not the only victim. As the president lay mortally wounded in the backseat of the limousine, a city too was bleeding. Many called Dallas a city of hate that bred the assassination.
The press really made up its mind before it came in to cover the tragedy that this was a city that was all bad.
In the next 24 hours, journalists around the world would ask hard questions about Dallas. Was it right for violence? Did the right-wing conservatives kill the president? On the day after the assassination, the Washington Post quoted Dallas federal judge Sarah Hughes, the same woman who swore in Lyndon Johnson at Love Field. Hughes said it could have happened anywhere. But Dallas, I'm sorry to say, has been conditioned by many people who have hate in their hearts and seem to want to destroy.
They fed this notion that some conservative fanatic had shot the president.
Former Senator John Tower blames the media for branding Dallas a city of hate.
Even in the aftermath, I would say, yes, but this is Dallas has a terrible climate because they're a bunch of right-wing reactionaries and they hate anybody that's liberal, and it's in that environment the president was shot.
Newspaper coverage became increasingly negative toward Dallas. The New York Times quoted a minister's wife who said, "We think it's this Western tradition. They are used to shooting at everything they don't like." Former Channel 4 News director Eddie Barker was in the thick of local coverage of the Kennedy shooting. He also blames the news media for giving Dallas a black eye.
I don't think you can indict an entire community for something like that. Although Dallas was indicted for it, no question about that.
Within about 48 hours, Dallas would be publicly indicted on yet another charge of violence, for the man suspected of killing Kennedy would never go to trial. Lee Harvey Oswald was himself gunned down, and this time it occurred live on national television.
Lee Harvey Oswald had just been questioned by police when nightclub owner Jack Ruby came up. Ruby often showed up at fires or traffic accidents and was well known to police and thought to be harmless. Except this time he was armed.
This is the basement floor of the Dallas City Hall.
There was very intense feeling that this was a typical Western frontier type of city, which of course it was not, it is not. There was a lot of feeling that Dallas must be to blame because of those extremist elements being in the city at the time.
When Ruby shot Oswald here at police headquarters, it drove yet another nail into the coffin of Dallas's image. The city was convicted and sentenced for both murders without a trial. The newspaper's war on Dallas continued. One prominent paper wrote, "A new Dallas sickness puts justice in ill repute." It described the shooting as a gangland killing in the old Chicago style. Another article said, "The world press is asking questions about the quality of justice in Dallas."
People blamed the city. They didn't blame the assassin.
Former Dallas Morning News President Joe Dealey says many Dallasites felt a sense of guilt for the assassination.
They felt guilty because the event occurred in this city.
Probably a lot of people carry the guilt with them just because the press told them they should be guilty.
Then Dallas Mayor Earl Cabell tried to tell the world the assassination was the act of a maniac not tied to the city. It did not help. In reference to the Oswald shooting, one paper reported, the doctrine of an eye for an eye has prevailed in Dallas.
Images of Dallas as the gem of the Southwest had quickly been replaced with images of hate and violence.
In the coming days, we'll explore how Dallas coped with those images.
Bud and Steve will continue this series of reports each night this week on this broadcast.
Moving over